The WNBA is finally at a turning point, and it might be tripping over itself at the worst possible moment. Because while fans are waiting for tip-off, while momentum is finally building, there's a very real chance the WNBA season could be delayed. Not because of injuries, not because of logistics, but because of CBA negotiations that are spiraling toward chaos. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If this season gets pushed back even a single game, it's not just a scheduling issue, it's a credibility issue.
Well, we got a couple of quick things to talk about today. Annie Constable of Front Office Sports was on had an interview with Rachel Demita. Rachel's got a really good channel. I enjoy watching it. Look, she's probably like, oh no, this guy watches. Hey, it is what it is. I don't have to worry about whether I hurt anybody's feelings ever. I'm not trying to be a journalist, nor do I want to be.
Free agency is already in limbo. Over 100 players are waiting. Teams can't move. Fans don't know what's coming. And behind the scenes, executives are quietly admitting what the league won't say publicly. Panic is starting to set in. This isn't some routine labor discussion anymore. This is about leverage, control, and whether the players in the league understand just how fragile this moment really is. Because after years of losses, the WNBA is finally staring at real money, real growth, and real attention.
I have an issue with it because the owners are part of this equation, whether anybody likes it or not. And there was a conversation about Unrivaled being a conflict of interest, and Annie said, well, the WNBA encouraged them to play in other leagues at one time. Yeah, when they were making $75,000 or $100,000, it wasn't that big a deal. The conflict of interest is two things now.
And one bad decision could blow it all up. Welcome to Her Hoops. If you care about the future of this league, buckle up, because this conversation is about to get uncomfortable. Like, subscribe, and let's get into it. To understand how serious this is, you've got to zoom out for a second. The WNBA Players Association and the league have been locked in CBA talks for months now. The league already put a proposal on the table back in December, and according to multiple reports, the union is still waiting, still negotiating, still holding out for more. Meanwhile, something else changed. Money. Not hypothetical money, not maybe someday money. Real revenue is finally on the horizon.
But now that you're talking about a lot more money, the teams are going to be like, yeah, we don't want you to play in other leagues, because if you get hurt, okay, our asset can be damaged. By the way, Brianna Jones, torn meniscus, playing in another league. Supposedly will be good by the time the season starts.
New media deals, increased visibility, expansion buzz. For the first time in league history, owners can actually see a path to profitability. And that's where the tension kicks in. Players are pushing for massive salary increases, numbers that in theory could climb as high as 7 figures. But at the same time, many of those same players are deeply involved in outside leagues, operating in the same basketball space, creating questions the league can't ignore. Because once you're talking about $500,000 to multi-million-dollar contracts, the rules change. Owners stop seeing players as interchangeable. They see assets, investments, risk. And now, with free agency approaching fast, the clock is ticking. Over 100 players are set to hit the market. Traditionally, WNBA free agency moves fast. A sprint, not a marathon. But this time, everything is frozen. No signed CBA, no clear rules, no certainty. And that uncertainty is exactly how you end up flirting with a delayed season. Here's where this starts to get messy. First, free agency. WNBA free agency isn't like the NBA. It's fast, compressed, and usually over in a matter of weeks. Mid-January hits, deals start flying, and by mid-February, most of the dust has settled. That model does not work without a finalized CBA. Teams don't know the salary structure. Players don't know contract limits. Agents can't plan. Executives can't commit. Everything freezes. And when everything freezes, the calendar becomes your enemy. Second, the sheer volume of free agents. This isn't a normal year. There are more than 100 players expected to hit the market. That alone would stretch the system. Add in uncertainty, And now you're asking teams to negotiate blind. Third, and this part matters, preparation time. Training camps, preseason, marketing schedules, travel logistics. None of that magically comes together overnight. Miss the early February window, and suddenly you're compressing everything or pushing dates back. League sources have already hinted at the quiet fear. If a deal isn't done early enough, the season itself becomes negotiable. And let's be real, once the idea of a delayed season is floating around, leverage shifts, pressure builds, narratives form. That's not just bad optics, that's a power struggle playing out in public. And in a league still fighting for long-term stability, that's dangerous territory. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, conflicts of interest. For years, players were encouraged to play in overseas leagues and off-season competitions. And that made sense when salaries were low. When players were making $75,000, $100,000, you did what you had to do. But that era is over. Once you start talking about $500,000 salaries, and possibly much more, the logic changes. Because now, the WNBA isn't just a league, it's the investment. And here's the contradiction. Some of the same players pushing hardest in CBA negotiations are also tied to leagues that directly compete for talent, attention, and calendar space. That's not a moral judgment, it's a structural problem. Imagine negotiating a labor deal while leadership figures stand to benefit if the season stalls. Even the perception of that is a nightmare. Because if the WNBA delays games, outside leagues gain leverage. On top of that, injuries don't care about intentions. When a player gets hurt outside the WNBA season, the league still pays the price. Teams lose availability, fans lose stars, momentum disappears, and owners see all of this. So when the league hesitates, when restrictions start getting discussed, when patience wears thin, it's not greed, it's risk management. The problem is, while both sides jockey for leverage, the clock keeps moving. And the longer this drags on, the harder it becomes to pretend this is just normal negotiations. Let's strip this down to the part that actually drives every decision here: money and control. For the first time in WNBA history, the league isn't negotiating from desperation. There's a real media rights deal, there's real sponsor interest, and there's finally a sense that the league could turn the corner financially. That matters, because owners don't just fund teams out of goodwill. They fund them because they believe the business will eventually make sense. Now put yourself in their position. You're being asked to commit to dramatically higher salaries. You're being asked to absorb more risk. And at the same time, you're watching players participate in other leagues where injuries can, and do, happen. That's not hypothetical. It's already happened. Once contracts grow, the tolerance for that risk drops to zero. That's when restrictions start getting written in. That's when conflicts stop being brushed aside as player freedom and start being treated like business liabilities. From the player's perspective, the frustration is real too. Free agency is supposed to be their moment, their leverage window, their chance to choose situations, cities, and futures. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Free agency cannot function without a signed CBA. So when players express concern about visiting teams, negotiating deals, or losing opportunities, there's a simple counterpoint the league keeps circling back to: sign the agreement. Because without it, nobody moves, nobody benefits. And the longer this drags on, the more fragile the entire ecosystem becomes. This is where the stakes get bigger than contracts and calendars. Because if the WNBA delays even one game, the damage won't just be internal. It'll be public, loud, and incredibly hard to spin. This league has spent years fighting the perception that it's unstable. Years convincing fans, sponsors, and broadcasters that it's finally ready for the big stage. And now, just as momentum is building, a self-inflicted delay would send the exact opposite message. Fans are already sensitive. They've sat through shortened seasons, stop-start schedules, and stars missing time. Casual viewers, the ones the league desperately needs, don't stick around through labor drama. They just move on. And culturally, the timing could not be worse. Women's basketball is riding a wave. Ratings are up. Visibility is up. Eyes are finally on the product. A delayed season wouldn't be framed as complex negotiations. It would be framed as another example of dysfunction. That narrative sticks. Worse, it risks alienating the very people the league needs most right now. New fans who don't have historical loyalty and won't wait patiently for things to sort themselves out. This was supposed to be the moment the WNBA turned the corner. Instead, it's flirting with a public relations nightmare that could erase months, even years, of progress. And once trust erodes, it's brutally hard to earn back. Here's the bottom line, and it's not comfortable. The WNBA is standing at the edge of something it's never had before. A real chance at sustainability, real revenue, real growth, real staying power. And that window is fragile. A delayed season wouldn't just hurt owners. It wouldn't just hurt players. It would hurt belief. Belief from fans, from sponsors, from networks that are finally starting to take this league seriously. Negotiations are supposed to be tough. That's expected. But at some point, both sides have to recognize when leverage turns into self-sabotage. If free agency is compromised, that's not a win. If preseason games disappear, that's not a statement. If the season starts late, that's not power. That's damage. The league made its move. A proposal is on the table. Another may be coming. But time doesn't care about negotiations. The calendar keeps moving, whether pens hit paper or not. This isn't just about salaries. It's about whether the WNBA understands the moment it's in. Because fans won't wait forever. Momentum doesn't pause. And opportunity doesn't circle back once it's gone. The league is closer than it's ever been to turning the corner. The question is simple. Will everyone involved let that happen? Or will they fumble it at the finish line? This is Her Hoops. If you care about the future of women's basketball, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me what you think about these negotiations below. I'll see you next time.